What about Cal Riley makes him so tough to pitch to?
He's not very tough to pitch to when you execute your pitches.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
Ballpark. Out to right center field. Punched back. Cal Raleigh. He gets the Blue Jays again. Cal Raleigh. High lift out towards right center field. It sends Kiermaier back. Cal Raleigh. He got him again. They're not going to let him into the country next year. His second home run today in as many at-bats.
A big series win this weekend in Seattle for the Seattle Mariners against the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays fans packed the house in Seattle as they always do every year. I was there Friday and Saturday for the games, and it seemed like it was like 70-30 Blue Jays fans. I asked a few players on their thoughts of the series against Toronto and the Blue Jays fans coming in to pack the house, and everyone is a fan of it. Just the energy in the stadium during this weekend is always very high. All three games this weekend were decided by one run. On Friday, the Mariners won 3-2. On Saturday, it was a home run derby. They won 9-8 after everything, but there was 7 total home runs on Saturday, and each team had a 3 home run inning. The Blue Jays had a 3 home run inning in the 3rd inning, and then the Mariners had a 3 home run inning in the 5th inning. And Cal Raleigh continues to torment John Schneider and the Blue Jays.
What about Cal Riley makes him so tough to pitch to?
He's not very tough to pitch to when you execute your pitches.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
Ballpark. Out to right center field. Punched back. Cal Raleigh. He gets the Blue Jays again. Cal Raleigh. High lift out towards right center field. It sends Kiermaier back. Cal Raleigh. He got him again. They're not going to let him into the country next year. His second home run today in as many at-bats.
And Cal Raleigh had 6 home runs through his last 6 games versus Toronto after that second home run he hit on Saturday. And as you heard Goldsmith say on the broadcast, the Blue Jays are going to do their very best to keep Cal Raleigh out of Canada next year. Also, Teoscar Hernandez had a big series against his former team. On Friday, he had the walk-off hit against Jordan Romano in the bottom of the 9th inning. On Saturday, he also provided the game-winning RBI, and after Saturday, that marked 3 games in a row that Teo was the guy to drive in that game-winning run. After this series win against the Blue Jays, they are now 3-3 against the Blue Jays on the year, and as of today, they are now 4.5 games back from the last wildcard spot, which is the Toronto Blue Jays. This was an important series over the weekend as the tiebreaker in the wild card. Let's say that the Mariners and the Blue Jays both have the same record at the end of the year. They both are tied for that last wild card spot. The tiebreaker would be the series between those two teams on the year. And since it's even between the Blue Jays and the Mariners, the second tiebreaker is division record, which as of today, the Mariners are on top of the Blue Jays. The Mariners have a 15-11 divisional record against the AL West, and the Toronto Blue Jays have just a 7-20 record against the AL East this year. Now, this is a very important week for the Mariners as it may have a bit of influence on what the front office will do at the trade deadline. And this week, they head out on the road for 3 games against the Twins starting today, and then 3 games against the Diamondbacks this coming weekend, followed by the next series versus the Red Sox in Seattle. But that trade deadline is August 1st, so these next 6 games versus the Twins and the Diamondbacks are going to be crucial. However, although this next week is going to be very important for the Mariners and their record, Jerry Dipoto, the president of baseball operations, has made it pretty clear that the Mariners are not in a spot to be aggressive at the trade deadline as far as buying is concerned. He said pretty objectively that the team hasn't been able to separate themselves in a meaningful way, being 4.5 games out of the wild card at this point in the year. He said that the bats have been average, which might be even an overstatement as they're about 23rd in the league in OPS currently. And he stated that they've already tapped into their organizational depth with Bryce Miller, Brian Wu, the various other pitchers in the bullpen, Isaiah Campbell, Prelander Baroa, all those other guys. And then he said that with the bats, they don't really have another wave in the minor leagues that can come up to help the major league team right now. With Jared Kelenic breaking his foot, they called up Cade Marlowe. They had already called up Mike Ford at some point, in the past month or so. But here's what Jerry had to say on the trade deadline.
We've really exercised a full organizational, I guess we've tapped into our organizational depth to play to this point. I'm not sure that there's much more there that we can go tap into. We are headed into the trade deadline. We've not really separated ourselves in a meaningful way to be aggressive on the buying end. But We are constantly trying to find ways to make ourselves better, and we'll use these next couple of weeks of July to consider those ways, whether it's better to make a push for the 23 season or to better situate ourselves for 24.
So when I hear you say that, what I hear you saying, and maybe I'm wrong, is that selling in some fashion is not off the table.
No, and it never has been. I think when you've asked that question in the past, I've always tried to answer it as honestly as I can. We are always, 1 foot in camp of buyer and 1 foot in the camp of the seller, believing that the best way to approach any trade deadline is with the mindset of how do we make the Mariners better? And it's a broad question that can be answered in a lot of ways. So, in years past, we've done a little of both. Last year, we were very aggressive in the trade market for what I would call, the big fish, and we were able to land Luis Castillo. This year, we're probably not going to be in that market. We're going to be more in the margins market, or trying to find a way that we can get a little bit better in 23 and better situate ourselves for 24. Because one way or the other, we've learned a lot the first half of this season, and I think there's a public narrative to our offensive team, and there's the actual, and the actual is, we're about an average Major League offense by most advanced metrics, and we need to find a way to be better than average. And, in order to do that, we can tap into a lot of different avenues, and some of it's going to come from our system. Some of it's going to come from outside, and it has to. And maybe that starts now. We have to find a way to become better than average. And it's going to require some creative moves, because we don't have a next wave of bats at AAA ready to come and push us over that edge. And we need our young players to step forward, moving forward. And we're probably going to need to address something from outside as well.
So as Jerry alluded to, the Mariners won't be going after any big real names like a Luis Castillo like they did last year at the deadline. And there's been rumors of them talking with teams about trading young pitching for young hitting, but I just don't see how they could trade young pitching right now, especially with Robbie Ray being out, with Marco Gonzalez being down with no timetable for his return. You need all the pitching you can get right now, and during this interview, he also mentioned about Brian Woo's limitation on innings. Brian Woo is going to stay up in the major leagues for the rest of the year, is what he said, but they very well might skip a start for him at some point. They might add a 6th man to the rotation, is what he said also at some point. Although, just as I was making this video, it looks like the Reds are willing to trade Jonathan India for young pitching. And with the Mariners having a big need at second base as far as the bat is concerned, India is a guy that makes a lot of sense. India is a 26-year-old second baseman who currently has an OPS plus right at league average, but he plays with a lot of energy and has high upside, and is under team control through the 2026 season. But needless to say, it's going to be a chaotic week for baseball, so make sure to stay locked in on your Twitter account, and make sure to watch the M's this week as they take on the Twins for 3 games. The Twins currently have the 2nd best starting rotation in all of baseball per Fangraphs wins above replacement. They'll be facing Kenta Maeda today, Pablo Lopez tomorrow, and then Joe Ryan on Wednesday. And then, like I mentioned, they head to Arizona for the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks are 2nd in the NL West. They've had a fantastic year. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on what the Mariners should do, who your team should trade for at the trade deadline. And also make sure to tune in to Seattle Sports 710 on Thursday mornings, as Jerry Dipoto is on every Thursday to talk about what's going on with the Mariners. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
All right, guys, goodbye, Zone, and don't forget it.